Okay, so iPadOS update was pretty minor this year if you don't use the Apple Pencil. And the biggest change, believe it or not, is the minor design updates to some of the apps. You have more sidebars, toolbars, and drop-down menus. And I think it's done more for macOS than iPadOS. See, this September, all of iPad apps are going to be available on Macs by default. And this new design language makes perfect sense to maintain continuity between Mac apps and iPad apps. Okay, the sidebar first. It's exactly what you think it is. More apps now support it, and it's smaller and slightly updated. The bottom tabs are mostly gone for good, and everything is integrated to the left. A few of the apps also have this toolbar across the top for all of the buttons. And while it does bring everything to a single location, it's not any quicker as Apple would like you to believe. In fact, I would argue it's worse. Take Files for example. Before you could swipe down to reveal all of the buttons, but now they are tucked away in a drop-down menu. I get it that they want to maintain continuity, but these 3-dot drop-down menus, in my opinion, don't make sense on the iPad. But overall, it's nice to see that apps are now being redesigned just for the iPad instead of optimizing iPhone apps for the big screen, even though it's mainly for Mac. Search also got a pretty major design update. It's more compact and floats over the screen instead of taking up the whole display. You cannot move it around though like on the Mac, but it's pretty much on par with everything else. You can search the web, your files, and everything you'd expect. It doesn't actually do anything more than it did before, but it's cleaned up a little. There are a lot more suggestions and you can tap to select the top hit right away. It overall feels a bit faster with more relevant results. The downside? There's no way you can summon it inside an app without a keyboard. Yeah, that's a hit. I don't know if I'm going to use it any more than it did before, but it's definitely more usable now. Now something that I do use on the regular, Safari didn't got much this year. Tabs are slightly updated. It can now do translations and more security features. Compared to the new Mac version, it honestly looks like such a downgrade. No customizations, no plugins, no nothing. Okay, so the Files app now looks a lot more like Finder on the Mac, but doesn't quite match up to it. The sidebar was already there, but it's cleaned up a little to look better. That bottom bar is gone, which is nice. And you already know about the toolbar and drop-down menus. The truth is there are no real core improvements and it's still limited compared to Mac. And like always, there are a number of smaller improvements, like the new widgets that cannot be placed on the home screen, compact calls that don't take over your entire screen, compact Siri UI that goes away when you tap anywhere, more AR stuff, privacy improvements from iOS 14, shortcuts improvements that I personally don't ever use, and YouTube now works in 4K. Okay, that's major. And that's all I think. Not what we expected when iPadOS was made its own separate thing last year. This feels like we are back to pre-iOS 13 days. Like seriously, there's basically nothing if you don't use the Apple Pencil. And if you're thinking of installing the beta, I'd say don't bother. There's not much to it. Personally, I would love to see a version of macOS on the iPad, especially now with macOS 11, or maybe even bring some of the Pro apps to the iPad. But that's just wishful thinking at this point. Let me know your thoughts on this update in the comments, and I'll see you next time.